Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another session on polity and constitution. I hope I'm audible as well as visible. Great. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Let's wait for a minute or so. Others can keep on joining, and then we'll begin our discussion once majority of you have joined the session. Okay, so let's begin our discussion. And first up, we'll do a quick recap of what we studied in the previous class. Others can keep on joining in the meantime. So in the last class, we had, of course, taken up for discussion, the topics based on the general discussion on the subject, the syllabus, right? Number of questions being asked in the examination. And of course, we also saw the very important element of book list, right? And I did mention what will be your sources, what is the syllabus going to be, and how to proceed about things. And we also discussed some basic information on technical terms that we would be using in our coming lectures. Then we took off our discussion on the topic precedent, starting with the post, the election procedure. We also looked into the concept of vote value, the formula for vote value, right? The formula given by N.G. Iyengar. And then we also saw as to how the election is a one which is conducted through a system of proportionate representation by means of single transferable vote. And we also saw why the election is indirect. And then we further certified it with the fact that Article 74 clearly says that, in a parliamentary system, the whole concept of parliamentary system is based on this premise that the real head is the head of the government, and the head of the entire country, the head of the state, is actually a nominal head, right? And we saw, because of this and some other reasons, why we have an indirect election. Then the conditions of service, the salary, etc. Funds, the three funds that we have: the CFI, the most important fund, and then the PAI, the Public Accounts of India, and then there's an optional fund called contingency fund, which may or may not be created, but of course our parliament, through passing a law, has created a fund called the Contingency Fund of India. Then we saw some executive powers, some judicial power, military power, and we also discussed capital punishment in the previous class itself. I'm not sure what your views are or how much have I been able to change your views, but we saw the conclusion. A more balanced approach is what is required when you write your answers as far as the conclusion is concerned. And that is where we had ended our discussion in the previous class, right? Now we'll take up for discussion the remaining topics We'll navigate through the legislative powers. We'll also look at the veto powers, ordinances, and then we'll end our discussion with the important position of the president, then the vice president, then the prime minister, council of ministers, attorney general, cabinet committee, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, today being Saturday, our lectures on Saturdays start at 12 as it has happened, and it continues till 8. I'm sure you're aware, from 12 to 8. So just to point this out here, our first break would be at 1:30. So 1:30 to 1:40. Let's have a small break. And from 1:40 to 3, again we'll have a class. And from 3 to 3:40, we'll have a lunch break, right? And 3:40 to 5:40, we'll have a class. And from 3, yes. And from 5:40 to 6, we'll have one more break, snacks break of sorts, right? So these are the breaks you will have. Plan accordingly. Eat, drink your food accordingly. And that's the beauty of sitting in your house and studying, right? These breaks are not really food breaks, but these are more like, giving a break to your mind to just reorganize, recollect your resources and stuff. Anyway, so first break at 1:30, next break at lunch is at 3, and then we'll have a snacks or tea break at 5:40. Okay. Now, let's begin our discussion on the legislative powers of the president. So, first up, as far as legislative powers are concerned, a very important element is a summoning or proroguing of the parliament and dissolving the Lok Sabha. So just to give you a premise here and to help you also understand, see, in our country, in our parliament, we have 3 sessions. Sessions in the parliament. So what sessions do we have? There are primarily 3 sessions. Session number 1 is what is actually currently going on in the parliament. That is what is called the budget session. So we have the budget session going on. Normally, the budget session starts from the last day of January and continues till April. January to April. For example, in 2023, that is this year, budget session started on 31st of January 23 and continued till, or is supposedly going to continue till the 6th of April 2023. This is actually the session that is there as far as this budget is concerned. Sessions basically mean the parliament, all the MPs in the Lok Sabha, MPs in the Rajya Sabha, they'll go and meet in the parliament and discuss on the budget, the bills, etc., question the ministers, question the government, right? That's all that happens in the session. Think of it like the polity session, right? So we have 5 to 6 weekends where we'll be discussing every aspect of polity. That entire consolidated classes of polity is what is a polity session, right? So we have a budget session. Then after a few months, we will have what is called a monsoon session. Normally, this session takes place in July and August. Again, to give you an example from last year, because this year we are yet to come to July. So last year, the session was from 18th of July 2022 to, I believe, 12th of August. 12th of August 2022. And the third and the final session is what is the winter session. So there is no summer session, no autumn session, right? Winter session normally and ideally takes place in the month of November and December. Though last year, this session took place only in December. It started on the 7th of December 2022 and it ended on the 23rd of December 2022. So this is what is the winter session. Sometimes there could be a difference in dates. And just to clarify here, dates are not fixed. Okay. These dates are primarily decided by the government in consultation with the presiding officer of the house. Okay. That is how these dates are decided. Now, just to point this out, whenever you want a session to start, let's say the budget session or the monsoon session is to start on 18th of July. This means all the MPs are sitting in their houses, in their constituencies, right? In their hometowns. They have to be called to Delhi. They need some information. How will we inform them? Somebody has to inform them, right? So an official notification is released to inform all the MPs on when to meet for a particular session. That is what is called summoning a session, calling for a session. Okay. So summoning a session, summon means to start a session. Summon a session. This means session begins. And summoning of a session is announced by the president. Second thing is to prorogue, prorogation. After the entire discussion is over, the government has said that the, let's say, the budget session will continue till 6th of April. On the 6th of April, now the MPs know that, okay, the session is over. But officially, they will be told by the president, guys, session is over. Please go home, not get lost, go home and work for the constituency, right? So this is what is the official statement which comes from the president, that please go home now, the session is over. When the next time we all want to meet, I'll inform you again. That is officially ending the session, right? So that is called prorogue, Prorogue, prorogue. Summon is to start, prorogue is to end. So proroguing a session means what? Session ends. And both of these are announced by the president. And the president can summon and end a parliament anytime and any place. So he can call the people to meet at any place and any time. That is called summoning and proroguing a session. There are no number of sessions fixed. These things are not mentioned in the constitution. Okay. What is mentioned is that the maximum gap between two sessions, this gap between budget session and monsoon session and winter session and budget session, this maximum gap between two sessions can only be 6 months. That's it. So within every 6 months, you have to conduct a parliamentary session. That's an important element. Maximum gap between two sessions is 6 months. And this maximum gap or gap between two sessions is known as recess. Like in your school days, you had a break, lunch break, etc. Recess, same thing. This is mentioned in the Constitution. These things are collectively mentioned under Article 85. So the Constitution does not really tell us as to how many sessions will be there, 3, 4, 10, 20, 100, what names to call them. But it does tell us that you have to have one session every 6 months. That's there. So this is Article 85. Beyond this, once the sessions are over, after every 5 years, the Lok Sabha gets dissolved, meaning all the MPs are asked to vacate their seat and we have fresh elections. Dissolution. So this dissolution of the Lok Sabha, this word that you see here, this is also announced by the president only, that now the Lok Sabha is dissolved. Guys, we'll go for fresh elections. All the MPs who are there, you please vacate your seats. New elections now. Okay. Dissolution basically means the life of Lok Sabha comes to end, which implies fresh elections. This is what is called dissolution. All these things are officially done by the president. Mind you, officially. The real power lies in the hands of the whom? The Prime Minister. Article 74. I believe you remember, it all boils down to Article 74, right? Eventually, everything is being done by the Prime Minister only. So you may say officially the president is summoning or ending the session, but in reality, it is a Prime Minister who is asking the president, sir, please sign this order, let the session begin, and the session begins. Okay. Now, just to add a point here, these are sessions, but whenever the parliament meets, let's say the budget session is going on, discussions are taking place. What happens on every day in the session? So, every day of the session is called a sitting. Sittings in the houses. So whenever the parliament meets during sessions, like say today, we have met for a polity sitting, which will start from which started from 12 p.m. and will continue till 8 p.m., where we'll have initially some kind of discussion on the previously taught topics. Then we'll discuss the new topics. Then we'll have a lunch break in between. Then again we'll discuss some topics. We'll solve some questions. So an entire chart is laid very clearly in front of you on what exactly will you expect and should you expect from the current sitting of polity today. Same thing. So in the house, our MPs meet very early in the morning, right? As early as possible. And that time when they meet is 11 a.m. right? When they meet, for the first 1 hour, 11 to 12, we have something called question hour. What is question hour and all? Details under Parliament, where MPs can ask questions from the ministers, etc. From 12 to 1 p.m., there is an element of 0 hour. Now, what is 0 hour? Again, discussions later on, but 0 hour is a very unique innovation of India only. Again, basically, MPs ask questions from the government. Okay. Then, From 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., our MPs have worked for 2 hours now. They get tired. So we need a lunch also. Then the MPs, after working for 2 hours so immensely, they get tired and they go for lunch. From 2 to 6 p.m. is where they function. And this is where legislative business takes place. What is legislative business? Discussion on bills, etc. So bills, proposals, all these things that are passed after lunch. Before lunch, we question the government. After lunch, we discuss on bills, proposals, etc. Okay. So this is what happens in every sitting of the House. Now, officially, Rajya Sabha is supposed to function till 5 p.m. only. But Rajya Sabha MPs say, are we old? We will also function till 6 p.m. And they function till 6 p.m. There is a small difference here. Since 2014-15 onwards, we have found that the Rajya Sabha, in Rajya Sabha, 11 a.m. to 12 noon, they have 0 hour. And from 12 noon to 1 p.m., they have question hour. So in Rajya Sabha, it is just reversed. Okay. But that is only for Rajya Sabha. In Lok Sabha, early morning is where you have the 0 hour, question hour, and then you have the 0 hour. Don't worry, these things won't be asked in the examination, but we should know as to what happens in every sitting or every day when the MPs meet in the parliament. Okay. And of course, whenever the session begins, our MPs are there and they ask questions. So what happened recently was that when the MPs met on Monday, that is 13th was Monday, right? 11th was Sunday, so 13th was Monday. On Monday, the MPs met in the budget session. But what happened was that the opposition members, they were creating a huge hue and cry over nothing happening with respect to the Adani issue. And also the government was telling that, look at how one great leader of our country has gone to some international place and is making statements against India. So they were busy fighting. So in the House, let's say MPs are fighting, heated debates are happening, nothing is happening except they are fighting. The presiding officer can also say, guys, you are fighting too much. Nothing worth discussion is happening. Let's end the sitting today. Let's go back home, please. Let's go home. Let's meet tomorrow or maybe on Wednesday or maybe on Thursday. Go home, cool down, just relax, calm down, and then come back again. So when the sitting comes to an end, and sitting comes to an end every day, at 6 p.m. every day, what happens? Once 6 p.m. is over, the presiding officer, the speaker, the chairman, they will say that, sir, guys, the sitting is over. Let's meet tomorrow. What is he doing? He is ending the sitting. Ending the sitting is actually called adjournment. So there's a term for it called adjournment. Adjournment refers to sitting coming to an end. Prorogation refers to session coming to an end. Adjournment refers to sitting coming to an end. Sitting ends. Now, let's say I end the sitting today at 8 p.m. I'll tell you guys, that's all for today. Let's meet tomorrow. The date of next meeting has been fixed. Or on Sunday, I'll tell you at 8 p.m. that, guys, let's end our discussion today. Let's meet next Saturday. Date of next meeting is fixed. No problem. Sometimes date of next meeting is not fixed. For example, think of this date, 6th of April 2023. the budget session will be over. Last day, 6th of April, the presiding officer says, guys, budget session is now over. Today's sitting is over. Let's go back home. Once you go home, the president issues notification that session is prorogued. But when the presiding officer ended the sitting on 6th of April, he did not know when the next sitting will take place. No idea, because that depends on the prime minister and the discussions in future. That is why when, if date of next meeting is not fixed and then you end the sitting, that is called adjournment sine die or sine die, same thing. Adjournment sine die. Sine die or sine die, both pronunciations are correct. S-I-N-E, sine, D-I-E, die, sine die, sine die, both are correct. The only difference is adjournment, meaning date of next meeting is fixed. Sine die, date of next meeting is not fixed. That's it. Just on a side note, I think you should have known this also. Basic information on what happens every day. Okay. So that is it. Now, please don't worry on what is 0-hour questionnaire. I'm repeating here once again. We'll discuss these terms in the chapter Parliament. Okay. Don't worry on this. So this is the concept of sessions, summoning and proroguing the session and dissolving the Lok Sabha, the power of the president. Now, some more powers. Right to address. The president also has the right to address, meaning sometimes the president may feel, I want to give a speech to both the houses together or any house. Let's say the president is watching some YouTube shorts and looks at some motivational videos on public speaking, and the president says, I want to give a speech tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. only. Lok Sabha MPs, please come. That is the right of the president. He or she has full right to address, speak in front of either house, both houses together or any house, right? Whenever she wants to. This is what is mentioned under Article 86. Whenever she wants, she can speak or address houses, either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha or both houses together. But that is optional, right? Sometimes, on certain occasions, it is mandatory for the president to give a speech. That is what is called president's speech. It is actually mandatory. On few occasions, this is mentioned under Article 87. So, what are those occasions where it is mandatory for the president to give a speech? Those two occasions are, number one, commencement of the first session after each general election. After every Lok Sabha election, whenever any party wins, etc., after the elections are over, when the newly elected MPs meet, on that first day, the president gives a speech to both the houses assembled together. It is mandatory here. Both houses have to be assembled together. Both MPs will sit in Lok Sabha only. We have ample seats to sit in the Lok Sabha. You sit there and the president will give a speech. Okay. Number two, at the commencement of the first session of every year. What is the first session of every year? First session of every year is the budget session. So, the budget session starts in January, and you would see that on the first day, that is 31st of January, in the recent times, the president gives a speech, right? So that's called the president's address or the special address by the president. This is mandatory. The president cannot say, no, I'm feeling shy, I can't speak in public, I feel awkward. No, no. Sir, ma'am, you have to speak. So, this is what is referred to as the special address by the president. So, on certain occasions, the president's speech is optional, depends on him or her. On few occasions, it is mandatory for the president to give a speech. This is the right to address, speak in front of both the houses. That is the right to address, addressing the houses. Okay, address the parliament. Address here means give a speech in front of the parliament. Then some more legislative parts. So we know very well that there are some MPs in the Rajya Sabha who are nominated, directly appointed by the president. No election takes place. They are directly chosen by the president. So she will nominate 12 members of the Rajya Sabha, members who are specialists in fields like literature, science, art, and social service. These are areas, these are fields where the members are specialists, and if they are specialists, then the president can appoint them directly. Again, let me tell you, it is not the power of the president. Are we clear? The government nominates them. The government will nominate people and will ask the president, sir, please sign, and the president will just sign it. Okay, this person is chosen as a member of Rajya Sabha MP. 12 people only. For example, we have this person. Who is he? He is the former Chief Justice of India, the 46th CJI Justice Ranjan Gogoi. Now, who is she? She is a very famous Odissean Bharatanatyam dancer, Sonal Mansingh, Dr. Sonal Mansingh. So, and this is retired Justice Ranjan Gogoi. Anyway, name is not really important. This point is important. Secondly, the president can also send messages to parliament. What messages? Not some good morning, good evening, WhatsApp jokes and all. No. Messages with respect to pending bills or other matters, right? With respect to pending bills, etc. Because we know very well that it is the duty of the Prime Minister to furnish information to the president, and it is also the right of the president to seek information from the parliament also. So the president can send message to parliament telling, please tell me what is happening in the parliament. I also want to know what gossip you guys are doing, what you guys are fighting about. He can or she can send messages to the parliament. Just a small point, please tell me, write the article. Which article says that the president has a right to be informed? It is the duty of the CM to furnish information to the president. Article, please. Okay, great. Some of you have mentioned the correct article. Dhaval, A.S. Hussain, Rani, Deepak, Vipin, Sudhanshu. Great. Ashutosh. The right answer is Article 78, not some other article. Article 78 is the right answer. Anyway, so we had seen that topic in the previous class. I hope you have revised what we had said in the previous class. There is something called revision, we have to do it every day, regularly. Coming back now, some other parts. So, our MPs can get disqualified, and there are various reasons for disqualification. We'll discuss those reasons later on. For example, if you are not a citizen of India, you can be disqualified. If you are of unsound mind, you have gone crazy completely, you can be disqualified. If you have become bankrupt, you can be disqualified. So a lot of these disqualifications are there. But who decides? Who decides on these matters of disqualification? The president decides. Article 103. The president decides on questions as to disqualification of members of parliament. But don't think that this also is her own power. No, no, no. It is not her own power. This power has to be exercised after obtaining election commission's opinion. And let me clarify, this opinion of election commission is binding, meaning even this is not the real power of the Indian president, because she will decide on disqualification, but the final decision is taken by the election commission. They will give the recommendation and the president has to act on that recommendation. So you see, they don't really have much powers and all. Then sometimes when certain kinds of bills are being brought in the house, for example, there is a bill called money bill. What is money bill definition? We'll discuss later on, hopefully tomorrow. But these money bills, before they are introduced in the house, before these proposals are brought in the house, the prior permission of president is required, right? Or other examples could be bills with respect to any bill that affects the taxation of states. Bills affecting taxation of states, or any bill that tries to introduce any surcharge, all these things, etc. So certain types of bills require the previous recommendation or the permission of the president. Only then can those bills be brought in the house. Okay. Then there is also a concept of joint sitting. So once you have seen a joint sitting happening, when joint sitting happens in these circumstances, jointly, meaning the special address of the president has to be done jointly to both the houses sitting together. Okay. Otherwise, there is a concept of joint sitting which takes place whenever there is some confusion between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha over the passage of a bill. If there is a bill wherein Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha differ over some aspects, let's say Lok Sabha wants to pass the bill, Rajya Sabha wants to make some changes, there is a conflict. In such situations, to resolve the conflict, the president can call for a joint sitting. More on this when you study the chapter Parliament, what exactly is the function or feature of this joint sitting. This joint sitting is under Article 108, important article. We'll discuss this process in detail later on. Okay, so that is the legislative power. Now, I was talking about in the previous class that these categorizations of various powers are some things that are not mentioned in the constitution. We have tried to categorize it for our ease of understanding, right? But there is one power which is clearly mentioned in the constitution. Whenever any question is asked, what is the legislative power of president? We don't have to write all these things. No, no, no. They are just for our understanding. This, what we'll see right now, is the only mentioned legislative power of the president. And it sounds so weird, right? I mean, look at the heading of this. But this is a photograph from the constitution only. So part 5, union. Chapter 1 is executive. Chapter 2 is legislature. Look at chapter 3. Chapter 3 is legislative power of president. Very weird, right? President is the executive. Why should the executive have legislative power? This violates separation of power. By separation of power means legislature performs legislative tasks, executive performs executive tasks. But here you are saying that legislative powers are given to the president. This is actually referred to as ordinance, mentioned as you can see under Article 123. A similar power exists for the governor also. Article 123 of the Indian Constitution. Of course, similar power for governor under Article 213. That's there. Anyway, so what is this ordinance? Please understand this very carefully. Let us say right now the session is going on in the houses. The budget session is going on. So if the government wants to bring any bill, any law, a law can be made. Why? Because MPs are there, they'll sit, discuss, pass the bill, and law is made. That's how laws are made. Bills are passed by the parliament. But then have you observed what happens during recess? Look at this date. After 6th of April here, 6th of April, till 18th of July or 10th of July, the MPs are not sitting in the parliament. Neither Lok Sabha nor Rajya Sabha. MPs have gone back to their constituency because MPs also have to work for their own benefit, work for the benefit of the people of the constituency. That's also there. So MPs have gone back to their constituency. No sitting is happening in the parliament. If the house is not sitting only, then how will you pass the bill? Right? So during recess or when any house is not in session, how can bills be passed? Because to pass the bill, both houses have to approve it and then the president signs it. In this situation, when there is some recess, right? Let's read. If, let's focus here. If at any time, except when both houses of parliament are in session. Of course, if at any time, except when both houses of the parliament are in session, if both houses are in session, then the bills can be passed by legislature only. Then the president is satisfied. If the president is satisfied that there are such circumstances which make it necessary for him to take immediate action, he may promulgate ordinances. So, whenever a house is not in session and the president feels that we have to take immediate action, he will pass something called ordinance. And just a use of word like we pass bills. So ordinances are promulgated. Meaning is the same, passage only. But the correct word to use is promulgating ordinance. Passing bills, promulgating ordinances. Okay. So the president will promulgate such ordinances as the circumstances appear to him to require. So what is an ordinance? Ordinance is nothing but a temporary law. Till the time the houses are not in session, the president can pass an ordinance or issue an order which is like a law. Now, look at this. She can promulgate ordinances when either house is not in session. Okay. Now, once the ordinance has been promulgated, okay, it continues to be in force like a law. Ordinance is like a temporary law. That is why we refer to ordinances as temporary laws. So why are we calling it temporary? Why not permanent? Because the right full authority to make law is the parliament. But the point is the parliament is not in session right now. So how do we make a law? Let the president make a law. But when the houses come back, then we have to show the houses that, guys, when you were not there, when you were in your recess, we had passed a temporary law. Please look at this. Approve it now. If you want to pass it, please pass it. When you are not there, we made a law. Okay. So, whenever such an ordinance is made, it shall be laid before both houses of the parliament and shall cease to operate at the expiry of 6 weeks from the reassembly of parliament unless approved. So basically what happens is, whenever an ordinance is promulgated during recess, once the houses come back in the next session, within 6 weeks you have to table the ordinance there. Keep the ordinance in the house that, see, when you are not there, we passed a temporary law. Now houses are there, they can look into the law, the ordinance. If they like it, they will approve it. Once the parliament approves the ordinance, then the ordinance becomes a full-fledged law. If they say, no, how dare you pass this ordinance, cancelled, then the ordinance is done, it's over. If you don't table it also within 6 weeks, the ordinance is dead, it lapses, it is over. So this is what is an ordinance. I hope this point is clear. And maximum duration for which an ordinance can continue, because we are calling an ordinance as a temporary law, so maximum duration is 6 months plus 6 weeks. I'll explain how this works. See, let's take some real-time data. Example. On the 6th of April, budget session will come to an end. Yes or no? Yes. On the 7th of April only, the government says, oh, we forgot to bring a bill. By mistake, we forgot. Now we have to bring a bill. What to do? We have to bring a bill. We have to make a law. So, on the 7th of April, ordinance is, ORD stands for ordinance, I believe. You will be okay with that. Ordinance is promulgated. Now, next session will take place in July. But let's say the next session does not take place in July. When will the next session take place? We know very well that the maximum gap or the recess is how much? 6 months. Within 6 months, the next session has to take place. There is no alternative only. So eventually, this ordinance that you have promulgated can continue for maximum 6 months. And after reassembly, meaning next session begins. After next session begins, you have 6 weeks more within which you can table the ordinance. So because of all these situations, the total time for which an ordinance may possibly continue without getting approved by parliament is 6 months plus 6 weeks. I hope this is a very basic kind of point. No need to focus on this too much. So this is the maximum duration for which an ordinance can continue. That is all about ordinances under Article 123. Now you may feel, oh, it's a very great thing, of course. See, as far as ordinances are concerned, we have to understand that yes, they are required. Of course, they are required. I mean, there are various situations when, I'll just point out some examples here. Need. Why do we need ordinances? For example, the best example is what happened recently. During pandemic, it was not possible for the MPs to meet in the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and we had to make some laws. How to make a law then? Because it is not always possible for MPs to meet, or there is some urgent situation. What if there is some war? There is some kind of, let's say, natural calamity. We have to pass a bill urgently. Yes or no? If we have to pass a bill urgently, we can't wait for MPs to come. And MPs, come on, we have to pass a bill. but MPs will come in their trains and cars and cabs and etc. It may take 5, 6, 7 days for all MPs to come. So to avoid that situation, we need some urgent law. For that, we need the ordinance, right? Of course, ordinance also has a very big problem. What is the big problem of ordinance? The biggest issue with ordinance is it blatantly violates separation of power. Yes or no? We are giving the president, mind you, this power is not of president. This power is of government actually. So don't feel that the president is making laws. No, no, no. It is a government which makes laws, right? Article 74. President has no power. So the government is making laws. Now, don't you think it violates separation of power? I mean, we have the legislature to make laws. Why should the government make a law? So the very first issue with ordinance is the violation of separation of powers. Why? Because the legislature's task is to make the laws. How dare the government make laws? Right? So this violates the separation of power. Secondly, whenever any law is made, what happens? A proposal comes in the house, detailed discussions take place in the house. Detailed discussion. After the detailed discussions take place, it's only then that the bill is passed. All the MPs question the government. But here, what is happening? MPs are not there in the house. The government sitting in its offices, the minister or the prime minister will promulgate the ordinance, will make the ordinance. All the ministers sit and discuss and they pass it. They tell the president, sir, ma'am, please sign it. And he or she signs it. That's it. Where is the discussion? The entire concept of democracy, discussion, the spirit of parliamentary democracy, it is being undermined. It is being flouted. No discussion takes place. The entire spirit of parliamentary democracy is being undermined, because that is the whole concept of democracy. Let the people decide. Indirect democracy, where we have chosen MPs, let them decide. But you are passing bills behind the closed doors of your offices, and then after 6, 8 months you're asking, okay, approve it now. That could be a problem. But of course, see, saying that we don't need ordinances, no. There are situations where ordinances may be required. Now, this entire concept of ordinances comes from British times. So, Lord Charles Canning, right, 1858. So, that Lord Charles Canning was the one who introduced the concept of ordinances. So, for the first time, it was introduced in 1861 by Lord Canning. Now, see, ordinances violate separation of powers. Of course, Britishers loved these ordinances because they did not want to devolve powers to the people who were elected by the Indians. That is why they wanted to control all the power at the hands of executive. So they loved it. And you should not be surprised to know that till 1947, 400 plus ordinances were promulgated. 400 plus ordinances. So that was there. During the discussion of in the Constituent Assembly in 1940s, late 1940s, that is 1946 to 1949, when we were trying to frame this constitution, lot of people actually did not like this ordinance. They said, why? What is this urgency? Whatever urgency it is, you call all the MPs, they will come in 2 days. You can wait for 2 days, you can wait for 5 days. How long does it take? No need for ordinance. But Nehru and Ambedkar, both of them shared the same opinion. They said, ordinance is after all required because there will be situations where we may not be able to meet immediately. So, in fact, Nehru and Ambedkar both agreed on this. Agreed on the need for ordinance. In fact, they also called ordinances as necessary evil. This is what the term that they gave to ordinance. That see, I know it is wrong. We understand that yes, the government is making a law. Ideally, the parliament should make a law. Yes, we understand. But what can we do? Sometimes it may be required. So they called it a necessary evil, but necessary. And Nehru in the Constituent Assembly told every member that don't worry, once we form the government, we will never misuse it. And whenever any politician says, I won't misuse it, don't worry, we should immediately start worrying. Because, just to prove this point here, in the first 12 years, that is 1950 to 1962, the Nehru government promulgated, you won't believe, 66 ordinances. 66 ordinances. 66 times it was so urgent that they could not wait for the parliament session. Really? And this has not stopped. Every government which comes to power till 2014 in our country, we had promulgated 668 ordinances. In fact, till 2021, we had promulgated 744 ordinances. Is it just a joke for us? Ordinances are meant for urgency. If it is so important to take immediate action, do you think we have had 744 emergency situations? We could not even wait for 5 days, 10 days. The governments love ordinances because there's no need for discussions only. No, who will question you? No MP is questioning you. So they love ordinances. This is a blatant abuse of ordinance. In 1993, when Congress was in power, 34 ordinances were promulgated in that year. 34 times. It seems as if the governments are waiting for the parliamentary session to come to an end. Session is over, let's promulgate ordinances to escape discussions. That is a big problem of ordinances. So these are some concerns that are there as far as ordinances are there. Now, to point out a very interesting situation that happened in our country. See, our states are at a different level only. When it comes to ordinances, states have their own concept, right? They are thinking at a different level only. I'll give you a simple example. This very famous case happened in the state of Bihar. This case became known as the DC Vadhva case of 1987. So what basically happened was that DC Vadhva was an economics professor who was conducting some research on land tenure in Bihar. Now, while he was researching, 1980s, while he was researching, he observed that from 1967 to 1980, in this time frame, in this time frame, in Bihar, 256 ordinances were promulgated. 256 ordinances promulgated. But that is not the end of story. He also found a very unique point. A point of observation was that 69 such ordinances were re-promulgated. 69 re-promulgated. Now, what is this re-promulgated? So, the Bihar government had found a loophole. What is a loophole? Now, think of this very simple point here of loophole. See, consider a very simple statement. Let us say we have three sessions, right? Session number 1 is the budget session. Then we have the monsoon session. Then we have the winter session. Fair enough. Now, when the budget session is over, the very next day, you promulgate an ordinance. Ordinance is promulgated next day only. Because budget session is over, MPs have gone back home, no house is in session, recess, ordinances can be promulgated. Now, this ordinance continues till the monsoon session, right? Continues plus 6 weeks. Now, ideally, you have to table the ordinance in the house, table meaning present the ordinance in the house and tell the MPs that, guys, when you are not there, we have passed a law, please approve it. What the government was doing was, it did not table the ordinance in the house. If you don't table it, this ordinance lapses. It's over. Fair enough. Now, once monsoon session comes to an end, the very next day, pass the same ordinance again. Same ordinance. Again, pass it. Again, winter session comes. You have to table the ordinance. Don't table it. Let it be over. It is over again. When winter session ends, very next day, again pass the same ordinance. Continues. The same ordinance is being passed again. You can observe this. Once winter session is over, the same ordinance is being passed again. Again the budget session comes. Again don't table it. Let it lapse. Session is over. Again bring the same ordinance. This means what? Without letting the parliament even discuss on the proposal, you are making a law in the country. How is this correct? Now, the problem is, this is not mentioned in the constitution. The constitution does not say you cannot re-promulgate. It only says if you don't table the ordinance in the house within 6 weeks, the ordinance is dead. It is completely silent on whether the government can bring the same ordinance again in the next recess or not. And this is what the government of Bihar was doing. They found a loophole and exploited it by bringing the same ordinance over and over and over again. Okay. So this is what was happening in the state of Bihar. Of course, this matter, when it went to the Supreme Court, why? Because DC Vadva and others filed a case in the court saying, what is this promulgate means what? Passage. Promulgate means to pass, right? So, what is this re-promulgation, re-passage of the same ordinance again and again? Is this allowed? Now, Supreme Court actually was silent on this matter. It though it scolded the Bihar government, it said, what is this nonsense? Just because it is not mentioned, you won't adhere to basic decency and behavior. This is a fraud. And Supreme Court used a unique phrase. Supreme Court said that re-promulgation, what is promulgation? Repassage. Re-promulgation is actually a fraud on the Constitution. We use this for the symbol of Constitution. This is what Supreme Court said. Supreme Court in 1987. But sadly, Supreme Court did not clearly say that you cannot repromulgate. It said it is very bad. But our politicians, if they were so innocent and nice people that they would adhere to scolding by Supreme Court, then there would be no problem only. But that's not how our politicians are. So this happened in Bihar, right? In 1987, Supreme Court gave a judgment. You'll be surprised. In 1989, very next year, 2 years later on, again a same problem came up. So what happened in 1989 was, there's this concept of see, government jobs are very important in the country, right? So in 1989, Bihar government passed an ordinance called Bihar Non-Government Sanskrit Schools Taking Over of Management and Control Ordinance. That was the name of the ordinance or the law, temporary law. So basically what happened, that there were 429 Sanskrit schools in Bihar, which are all private schools. Government passed an ordinance and took control of all those schools and made them government schools. This meant what? That all the teachers who were employed there, all the employees who were there, they all became government employees overnight. That's a great achievement. Government employees, government giving jobs, right? Now, this was an ordinance, meaning what? You had to table the ordinance and get it approved. But our great government of Bihar did not table the ordinance. It kept on re-promulgating it. The same thing. Just 2 years back, you have been scolded by the Supreme Court that when you pass or promulgate an ordinance, please table the ordinance in the parliament, in the assembly. Please do it. But they're not doing it. People, all the teachers had no idea. They thought, by government has made a ordinance, it's there, it's a law. That's it. They had not joined some UPSC coaching class to understand Article 123 or Article 213. They thought ordinance is a law. That's it. Now we are government teachers. Some of them got married also, got dowry also, full enjoyment that I'm a government teacher now, government job, permanent job, no work, full enjoyment. But then in 1993, there's a change in the government and new government came to power. This new government did not re-promulgate the ordinance and the ordinance lapsed. After it lapsed, the new government did not promulgate or pass the ordinance again. So what happened? Ordinance was over. All those teachers or all the schools went back to becoming private schools. All the teachers went back to becoming what? Private teachers. Lost their government job. They filed a case in the Patna High Court. This matter then went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court, this case started in 1993-94. In 1998, matter went to Supreme Court. Then finally, our Supreme Court, in a very, very quick judgment, a matter which started in 1989, the judgment came very quickly in the year 2017. In the year 2017, this basically was a Krishna Kumar Singh case only. Bihar government taking over Sanskrit schools. This judgment was passed in 2017. In just 20-25 years, justice was done. You see how amazing Supreme Court is. So fast, so quick, right? And then they make remarks on other organs to perform. I wish they were as fast and quick as other organs. Anyway, but this judgment has been an amazing one. Why? Because it has actually prevented misuse of ordinances. So what this judgment says is, ordinances, if you try to pass any kind of ordinance, it will always be subject to judicial review. Now see, there is nothing unique here. Supreme Court in 1970 also had said the same thing, right? Same statement in a case called Cooper case of 1970. So Supreme Court again said that if you promulgate any ordinance, we can check it. Check on what basis? On the basis that, was it really urgent? Is it actually a situation that requires urgency? Right? So we will check whether urgent situation is there or not. Or can you wait for 1 month? If waiting for 1 month is possible, then we'll cancel the ordinance. What is this urgency? You have to prove the urgency. First thing. Second, Supreme Court also observed that what is happening is that all these governments are promulgating or passing ordinances. They are not tabling the ordinance in the House. They're letting it lapse deliberately. Supreme Court said, no, no, no. After all, it is a mandatory constitutional obligation. Mandatory that you have to lay the ordinance before the House. You have to table the ordinance before the House. You can't let it lapse. No, no, no. The MPs, the MLAs in states, they have to discuss on the ordinance. You cannot take away their right to discuss on laws in the country, right? Because see, it is very important for the MPs or MLAs in states to agree on the need, the urgency, etc. It is important for their approval to be taken, because you are making a law without the legislature's approval. How can a law continue? That is wrong. And Supreme Court also said re-promulgation is not allowed. If the parliament or the state legislature has cancelled the ordinance, you cannot pass it again, putting a huge check, a stop on any kind of re-promulgation. Why? Because when you re-promulgate the same ordinance, you are trying to bypass or circumvent the legislature. You are trying to avoid the discussions being done in the House. How is it justified? So in a parliamentary democracy, the whole concept is that we will discuss everything and then pass it collectively. If we had to pass things from the government only, if we wanted the same kind of dictatorial system, we would have kings and queens. Why do we have a representative democracy? We choose leaders, they go and sit there, and then they collectively decide on what is to be done. So, repromulgation, not allowed. And also, if you have promulgated or passed an ordinance, every action you have taken in the name of the ordinance, it has to be taken back, right? If the ordinance is cancelled. If the ordinance has been cancelled by the parliament, by the state legislature, if not approved by legislature. So if the legislature does not approve of the ordinance, please take back all the actions. For example, let's say you pass an ordinance or promulgate an ordinance saying that next month in every Indian citizen's account, we will transfer 1 lakh rupees. This is the ordinance. Free money distribution yojana. And the money is sent. Now, this ordinance has to be tabled in the next session, in the monsoon session. the parliament says, what is this useless kind of proposal? From where will you get all this 1 lakh rupees for every account? Cancelled. Ordinance cancelled. Now the government must go and collect or recollect all the money sent to various accounts. Give us back the money. Of course, as far as possible. Now, if somebody has spent the money, then what can the government do? But as far as possible, take back all the actions which have been done in the name of the ordinance if the ordinance is not approved. This is what is the concept of repromulgation, and thankfully 2017 onwards we have found the misuse of ordinances has come, I won't say to a halt, but has been reduced to a large extent. That is definitely the case. So it took a Supreme Court judgment, 7 judges sitting together and giving a judgment, right? And only then finally we could put a stop on the misuse of ordinances. See, even now, to think of it, ordinances are of course important, but we have to keep some additional checks on it. Just to point this out, some suggestions. What can be an additional check on ordinances? Because see, we cannot remove it. No. Ordinances are required. There can be a situation where you may not be able to call the MPs in the parliament. Pandemic was a very good example. MPs could not come in the parliament. So we need ordinances. But what can be additional checks? Very simple. Number one, see, we fully understand that you cannot meet urgently. But why do you have to wait for next session? Ordinances are being used because it is very, very urgent to make a law. We can't wait for 2 months also. If the matter is so urgent, why don't we call a parliamentary session as soon as possible? Call a parliamentary sitting just for the ordinance. Call all the MPs, quickly come within, if not 2 days, 5 days, within 14 days, sufficient. 2 weeks is sufficient time. Call a parliamentary sitting at the earliest. Example, within say 2 weeks. This can be done. If it is so urgent, we can call for the MPs also, no problem. Number 2. So what has the government been doing in recent times? See, think of this situation. This is our session. Okay, session. Now what happens is, on the 6th of April or the 7th of April, you promulgate an ordinance. This means in the next session, between these 2 dates, you have to promulgate, bring the ordinance in the House. Supreme Court has said that you have to table the ordinance in the House in the next session. It's mandatory. But what day? What the government can simply do is they will bring that ordinance on the 12th of August, last day of the session. Okay, last day. And because of lack of time, they will say, see, we tabled the ordinance, but time was not there. Ordinance could not be passed, and hence we have to promulgate the ordinance again. So they are not tabling the ordinance in the initial days of session. They are waiting for session to end towards the very last hour, last day of the session. They table the ordinance. So that also needs to be avoided. What we have to do is table the ordinance as soon as the session meets. Table the ordinance as soon as houses reassemble. That is the new session begins. And since we know very well that this ordinance making power is not the power of the president, it is actually power of government. I think I don't need to tell you this again and again. but Article 74 is applicable everywhere. It will not be applicable only in those places I tell you it is not applicable. Otherwise, it is applicable everywhere. Okay. So one more thing that we can do is that the president should also exercise caution, right? What is your responsibility as a president? Will you not use your brains here? If you feel that there is no need for this ordinance, uselessly the government is bringing an ordinance just to escape any kind of discussion. So it's better to send the ordinance back for reconsideration. The president can send the ordinance back, advice back once at least for reconsideration. So president should exercise caution before giving what? Assent. Send back for reconsideration. So this can also be done. So these steps can be taken to further keep a check on the misuse of ordinances. That is there, and that is all as far as ordinances are concerned. Okay, so this is with respect to the ordinances. It's a very, very important element for our examination also. Questions have been asked in mains examination twice on this topic. So in that sense, it's important. I think now we have covered every possible ground with respect to both the issues as well as the additional checks that can be given. These are basically suggestions that can be incorporated while we address the concerns for ordinances. Lastly, coming to something which is actually the power of the president. So far, the discussion has been rather disappointing when it comes to the president's power, because every time there is something we say president's power, but Article 74. President's power, but Article 74. Eventually, president has all these powers, but it is always on the binding order of the prime minister or the binding advice of prime minister, right? So it's not really his power, right? But on certain occasions, you will find that yes, the president does have real powers, and this is what is the real power or the discretion of the president. So what is this veto power? First things first, what do you mean by veto? See, veto basically refers to the official power of any individual to refuse to allow something, refuse to accept something. So veto means refuse to allow. Let's say your mother allows you to purchase a new mobile phone and your father vetoes it, meaning your father refuses to allow the permission, says, no, I am not giving permission. Okay, veto power. So veto refers to refuse to allow. That is what is meant by veto actually. Now, what is this veto power? See, when it comes to ordinary bills, for ordinary bills or proposals, what are ordinary bills? Ordinary bills are those bills which do not need or which do not have any monetary element involved. What is the procedure? We have the two houses. We have the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. These two houses will pass the proposal. Yes or no? Any bill is passed by these houses only. Passage. passage of the bill. We know very well, when the bill is passed by Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, the bill goes to the president. Now the bill comes to our big boss, the president. Fair enough. When the bill comes, the president can say, oh, very good bill, very nice bill, amazing. And the president gives his signature. So we call this giving assent. Gives assent. Permission, approval, signature is called assent. Okay. So this is done. Now, there is also a possibility that the president says, I am rejecting the bill, or I am not signing, withholding my assent, rejecting the bill. That's also possible. So the president can withhold the assent or reject the bill. Why will the president reject the bill? Simple example. I'll give you a live example only. Back in 1950s, there was this area called PEPSU, Patiala and East Punjab States Union, PEPSU. It basically comprised of areas of Shimla, Kasauli, Chel, all these areas. In that area, this area was later on merged with Punjab in 1956. So in that area, there was something called President's Rule. So you don't know what is President's Rule, but we'll discuss it later on. But just to give you an example here, President's Rule was imposed in PEPSU. And when President's Rule is imposed, there is no state government. Central government becomes a state government. So there, the budget of PEPSU was being passed by the central government because there's no state government. Because of which, when the budget was passed, it was sent to Dr. Prasad. Dr. Rajendra Prasad was the president at that point of time to sign. But in the meantime, the government of PEPSU was restored. No longer there was President's Rule. So Dr. Prasad said that why do we need to pass the bill now? And he rejected it. One example. I'll give you a better example. Let's think of this. In 2024, that is next year only, we are going to have Lok Sabha elections. Yes or no? Next year only. And the month is going to be May only. Suppose now, in the month of April 2024, who is in power? The current BJP is in power. Now BJP brings a bill. They want to pass a bill, any kind of bill, all India temple bills, whatever. They pass a bill, but you know very well that Congress opposes the bill. Congress is not happy with the bill. But what can they do? They are in opposition. BJP has majority. They pass the bill. And the bill is sent to president. Now, president has not signed the bill immediately because there is no time mentioned within which the president has to sign. That exact time is not mentioned. So, president is, say, maybe outside the country, will come back and sign. In the meantime, elections take place in the country in the month of May. And surprisingly, by some magic, let's say, in the month of June, after elections, let's say Congress comes to power. Extremely unlikely. I mean, I am not against Congress. Sorry for the fans. Sorry to disappoint you, but it is extremely unlikely that Congress will come to power. Extremely unlikely. But what if it comes to power? Anything is possible. Now, the Congress did not want this bill. They hated this bill. But 2 months back, they were in the opposition. They could do nothing about it. Now they are in power. Congress will tell the president that, sir, ma'am, please cancel, reject the bill, don't sign the bill. This is where the president, on getting the advice from the new government, will cancel the bill. Are we clear on this? This is an example of a veto which is actually called absolute veto. Why? Because here the bill is dead. Bill is dead. It is over. If the president rejects the bill, bill is dead. This is what is known as absolute veto. But it is done on the advice of Council of Ministers. Not much of fun. There is no real power here. But there are two other vetoes which are actually the power of the president. Okay. So those two vetoes we'll discuss after the break. Let's take a break, a short one. And when we come back at 1:40, we'll discuss on those two veto powers. One of them is a suspensive veto, the other is a pocket veto. So what exactly happens in those veto powers? Let's discuss after the break. Be back at 1:40 and we'll continue our discussion further. Break, please. Okay, let's continue. Shivang, how ordinances against spirit of parliamentary democracy as the ordinance is laid before both houses? Ordinance is laid before both houses till 2017. It was not mandatory. We found that the parliament was not tabling it. And for around 2 to 3 months, you are making a law which has been passed without a single day of discussion. For that small period, even till date, we promulgate ordinances without any discussion. So ordinances are promulgated without discussions. It's only when you have to make that ordinance into a proper law or permanent law that you require discussions in the legislature. But till the time the ordinance is in force as an ordinance, it is what? It is a law made by the government without any discussion. So in that sense, it is flouting the parliamentary norms only. Ganpati during pandemic, yes, ordinances are used. Yes, Hussain, virtual meetings possible, but see, virtual meetings also cause a challenge when it comes to digital literacy. So that's there as an element. Shalu, ordinances can be repromulgated. So I am simply quoting the Supreme Court's KK Singh judgment. So that judgment is there. Now, repromulgations will not be allowed. But what if the government promulgates the ordinance towards the very end of the sitting? Then what happens? Then the government may have a genuine reason to repromulgate it. So I am only quoting Supreme Court judgment. If you repromulgate it, it is up for judicial review. As simple as that. Lakshmi, why should President exercise caution? Uh, because that's the task, right? To protect, preserve, uphold the constitution. Why should he not exercise caution? I mean, if he or she finds that the government is blatantly misusing the power to promulgate ordinances, he or she should interfere. That is what the purpose is. Or else, what is your need then? Johnny, but the president is bound to follow instruction of government. Yes, definitely. Eventually, you have to, but at least you will do your own bit by sending it back for reconsideration. I'll give you, I think I gave an example last time also. I'll give you an example again. See, you may feel that Article 74 is useless. What is the point of reconsideration? If I send the bill back for reconsideration, what happens? Nothing happens because the government will give the same advice again. I have to sign it, right? But this causes a very big impact on public opinion. Why did the president send back the advice? Discussions in media will take place. Reports will be published. People will start questioning the government's behavior, right? Let's see, government is doing something wrong. That is why the president is using the this power to send back the advice. It happened in 1990s when the central government wanted to promulgate an ordinance and via an order. Sorry, when the central government wanted to issue an order to impose president's rule in UP, the then president sent back the advice saying, "Tell me why I should sign it." He knew very well that if the government says, "No, sir, you sign it," he had to sign it. But he sent back the advice. And because of that, huge debate happened in media, and the government at that point of time dropped the plan only to impose president's rule in UP. Though they did this later on, but at that point of time, it acted as a check on the government. That's how it is used. Jay, in the last class, you said state list 59 entries, concurrent list 52 entries, but in constitution. But Jay, I also told you why you see the last entry as 47 or 66. I hope I explained that point, that there are some entries which are not there. If you look at the state list, don't see the last entry. Also see all the entries. There are some entries which are blank. Why? Because they have been removed from there. Okay, and that is why even though the entries are from 1 to say 47 in concurrent list. But what has happened is that few entries from the state list have been sent to concurrent list. So there they are blank, right? And here we have increased the number. 20A, for example. 20 is there, 21 is there. In between, we have 20A also. So it does not make any change in the last entry, but the total number of entries increases. I think I'd explained this in the previous class also. Who is this? Shall, your question has been taken already. Yes, they will declare that they are not signing the bill. Shivang, I just addressed your concern of parliamentary democracy. Sushmit, yes. That repromulgation with parliamentary approval is okay, but without it is of course a fraud. Viswa, why didn't the parliament make laws for fraud ordinances? Parliament will make a law only when the government makes a law, right? Government brings a bill. Why will any government try to curtail its own power? That's a problem, right? That is why I don't specifically make laws for this, because any party which comes to power wants to leave a window open for misuse. That is why. Okay. Yes, Shalu, publicly declare means not give a public speech, but in an official notification. Okay. I believe your doubts are largely addressed. Okay. Now, as I said, let's come back to our discussion here. So far, things have been disappointing for the president, to say the least. But when it comes to these two parts, you will find that these two parts are extremely unique in the sense that these are the real powers of the president. So, first up is the situation where if the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha pass a bill, send it to the president sends it back for reconsideration, just like Article 74. But Article 74 is for Council of Ministers. Here it is for Parliament. So what is happening here is the president is sending back the bill for reconsideration. Okay, so you send back this bill, ask the parliament, please think on this bill again, give one more chance. I don't like this bill. Now, in this situation, if the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha pass the bill again with the same majority, that is more than half of the people sitting there, if they say no sir, you please sign. So if passed again by both houses, if it is passed again by both houses, then the president is bound to give the assent. President bound to give assent. And in all these cases, what happens? The bill becomes act. This situation where the president is bound to give the assent. But what is happening here is for a small period of time, the president is suspending the passage of bill. He or she is asking the entire parliament, guys, you please see the bill. I don't like this bill. Are you sure you want me to sign? If the parliament says, sir, you please sign. Don't waste our time. Then the president has to sign, of course. But otherwise, he is for a temporary period suspending the passage of the bill. This is what is referred to as a suspensive veto. Why suspensive? Because we are not preventing the passage, we are only suspending, delaying the passage of bill. Or we can write this here rather. This is what is referred to as the suspensive veto. Meaning what? Sending back the bill once for reconsideration. This is the real power of the president. Now you may say, what is the point? He has to sign, but at least this is his power, that he can send it back once for reconsideration. Finally, and this has happened once in the case of Dr. Abdul Kalam in 2006, where he sent back a bill called Office of Profit Bill. We'll discuss that later on, that what was the problem. But he sent it back once. But the parliament passed the bill again and he had to sign it. That's there. But to tell you frankly, what is the best possible power that the Indian president has? This power is an amazing power. I mean, this power has no limitation only. This is when the president takes no action on the bill. What is the meaning of this? The problem here is when the bill comes to the president, there is no fixed time frame within which the president has to give his assent. No fixed time frame. 1 day, 2 days, 10 days, 100 days, no time frame. The president has to sign the bill at the earliest. That's it. But if the bill comes to the president and the president says, okay, I am reading it, let me read first, I'll sign. After a few days, the parliament again says, sir, did you sign? President says, my hand is paining right now, I can't sign. It's a problem. I'll sign, don't worry. Give me some time. After a few days, again the president says that, see, not feeling well, mobile is lost, bill copy is lost, what to do? Or the president says, I am still reading, I am trying to find out meaning of these words. See, the president is not saying, I will not sign. He's saying, wait, hold on, just relax. I will sign, give me some time. But actually, what he has done is he has taken the bill, kept in his pocket, and is roaming here and there, not signing on the bill. Neither saying yes, nor saying no. Right? The most difficult situation. Right? So if you have ever approached somebody to express your feelings to someone, yes is very good, no is clear cut. But if somebody says, let me think, that's the worst scenario. Right? So, of course, the same situation here, that the president says, give me some time, right, please. And this is what is a situation where the bill is actually dead only. Why? But the situation here is that the bill does not move forward. And this is a very beautiful part, because the parliament cannot force the president to sign. Right? The parliament cannot force the president to sign on the bill. If you send it back once, then you are forced into signing it. But in the first stage, you cannot force the parliament president to sign the bill. This is what is known as pocket veto. Complete discretion. So if you ever have any kind of doubt with respect to the situation of the president's power, president does have a very, very vast power in terms of pocket veto, which he can use or misuse. This is the veto power of the Indian president. Suspensive veto, absolute veto, and pocket veto, of which suspensive and pocket veto are his own powers. Clear on this? This is with respect to the veto powers of the Indian president. Now, just to add a couple of points here, we have discussed this for ordinary bills. Now, for money bills, if there is a money bill which is sent to the Indian president, what can he do? There is only one thing mentioned in the constitution. Suspensive veto can't be used. As far as the constitution is concerned, you cannot send back a money. What is suspensive veto? You cannot send back a money bill. Now you may ask the question, but sir, can the president use a pocket veto for money bill? He may. Now, in the books, they'll explain this line by saying that because the money bill is brought with his prior permission, the president will not use pocket veto. But nowhere is it mentioned that the president cannot use pocket veto. That's the whole concern. Article 111 only says that the president will not send back a money bill. That's it. And see, pocket veto is a very interesting part. It has been used earlier. A very famous case of pocket veto being used was in 1986-87. See, what happened was, just a small anecdote. There was used to be a law called Indian Post Office Act 1888. Under that law, there was a section 16 which authorized any government official to intercept your telegrams or mails and dispose it. So when you send a letter to somebody, British made law, the government official, if he or she felt that this letter contains anti-government activities, this letter contains anti-government behavior, then the government official could read your letter and could tear it and throw it away. The Indian Parliament in 1980s, Rajiv Gandhi government tried to widen this ambit to also include the private courier companies. So imagine the law being made. The law would now say that any authorized government official could intercept any mail, read the contents, and if they felt that that particular letter, that particular courier was against national interest, they could destroy the contents of it. And no proof was required to be submitted showcasing that it is some anti-national activity happening. It is your complete discretion. What kind of power is this? Now imagine you send a letter to somebody, confessing your emotions to somebody, and the person there is waiting for the letter. Now the government official in between reads the letter, destroys the letter. The other person is always waiting. You're also waiting. I sent a letter. What if he or she saw the letter, did not see the letter? We have no idea. So this kind of draconian law was supposedly going to be passed, where government official was getting the authority to intercept our proposals. When this bill was sent to the president, Gyani Zail Singh, he refused to sign it. I mean, he did not refuse, he used pocket veto. The very unique situation of pocket veto being used here, that was the case of this Indian Post Office Act Amendment Bill of 1980s. So this is where pocket veto has been used. Anyway, now one more thing, please understand this. You cannot use two vetoes together. Don't think that, sir, if the president sends the veto, right, for reconsideration, and if the parliament again passes it, can the president now use pocket veto? No, you can't. So just to mention two veto powers cannot be combined. Can't be combined. Okay. And lastly, there are also some proposals or bills which seek to modify the constitution only. Those bills are called constitutional amendment bills. Amendment bills. Now, in case of such bills, the president has no veto power. Here, it is mandatory for the president to give assent. Mandatory. And this was made mandatory by an amendment that was called 24th Amendment Act 1971. So since 1971, it is mandatory for the president to give assent to a constitutional amendment bill. The president cannot use suspensive veto for a money bill, but the president can use any veto power for ordinary bills. These are the three elements with respect to which the president has or sometimes does not have the veto powers. That's all as far as the powers of the president are concerned. Just to add a point here, there is also this concept of types of vetoes. Now, please, one more point. These veto powers, suspensive, pocket, etc., they are not mentioned in the Constitution. So these words are not used. What it simply says is the president can send back bill once for reconsideration. They are not using the word called suspensive veto, right? So these words are not used. The concept is used. That's it. So vetoes can be of four kinds. Of course, absolute veto, which is there with the Indian president also. Suspensive veto with the Indian president. Pocket veto, which is there with the Indian president. Pocket veto is also there with the US president. And the US president also has a veto called qualified veto. Qualified veto is just like a suspensive veto only. Same thing, no difference. The only difference is when you send back a bill, how many MPs have passed the bill. So in India, bills are always passed, all these ordinary bills, money bills, etc. They are always passed with simple majority. What is the meaning? Ordinary majority. What is the meaning of this? More than 50% MPs who are present on that day and are voting on that day. That's it. But in case of USA, if the US Congress, so Indian legislature is called the parliament. In USA, their parliament is called Congress, not a party. Their parliament is called Congress, two houses. So if the US Congress passes the bill, the president sends it back. This time, the US Congress has to pass a bill with a higher majority, meaning at least 2/3 members present and voting. Only then will the president be forced into signing the bill. Otherwise, no need to sign the bill. That's a difference. Qualified and suspensive veto. But both Indian and the US president have pocket veto. The only difference is that in case of US president, he has to must sign in 10 days, and the Indian president, what is the time frame to sign? No time frame. To give assent. That's the only difference. That is why in politics there is a pathetic PJ that the pocket of the Indian president is larger than the pocket of US president. Why? Because the US president can keep the bill in his pocket only for 10 days. After 10 days, you have to sign it. But the Indian president, there is no limit on how many days you can keep the bill in your pocket. No time frame is fixed for the Indian president to give his assent. That is all as far as the types of veto powers are concerned. That's it. We are done with the Indian president. Now, since we have seen all these situations, right, one very pertinent question should come in your mind, of course, is the importance of the Indian president. And some of you did ask earlier also, do we really need this person and all? So you went on to that extent of questioning the so-called legitimacy of this person. Frankly, do we need an Indian president? This means, are there some situations where the president actually exercises real power? Of course. Now we know that there are some situations where the president does have some real power. For example, there is something called, starting from the bottom, pleasure doctrine, at least for ministers, right? For ministers, under extreme circumstances, after giving proper warning, the president can use it. Definitely. Second, suspensive and pocket veto. This is definitely in clear-cut discretion. Discretion meaning what? On his own. Discretion. So that's there. And in fact, pocket veto is a very vast power, right? Then seeking information under Article 78, complete power. The president can seek information, can force the prime minister to give information. Returning advice once under Article 74, that's also discretion. Then, very interesting. See, the prime minister, I think I said yesterday also, previous class also, that the prime minister is appointed by the president. But if any party gets clear majority, the president has no option. You have to appoint the leader of that party which has won the election. Simple, as simple as that. But what if no party has a majority? Meaning, no party has a clear majority. There's a phrase for it. Remember, last class, we had discussed this phrase. If there is something called a hung parliament, when no party gets clear majority, in that situation, it is the discretion of the president. He or she can appoint anybody as a prime minister and ask them to prove the majority. That's there. Also, if the government has lost the majority in the house, then the president can dismiss the ministers and can dissolve the Lok Sabha also. If government or the prime minister plus council of ministers are unable to prove majority. What is majority? More than half. If you do not have more than half of the people supporting you in the parliament, you cannot form the government. If more than half the people in the Lok Sabha are against you, you have to resign. If you don't resign, the president will kick you out from there. Get lost. So this is also there. These are the situations wherein we have the Indian president, and that is why The Indian president is very, very important in times of constitutional emergencies. If such behavior happens, no party has the government, etc., then we need somebody to tackle these kind of exigencies in the country. That is why if a question is asked on the need for a president, don't say useless, remove the post. No, no, no. It is required, right? So that post needs to be there. It is not completely somebody who is powerless, nor somebody very powerful, somewhere in between, right? Who can exercise a check on the government. That is the role of the president. That is all as far as the topic president is concerned. Okay. Let's now summarize our discussion. As I said, towards the end of every module, we'll look into the important relevant chapters that are there. So in case you want to study Lakshmikant, I think I did tell you in the previous class also. Chapter 17. Okay. Then important articles. Now see, when I say important article, I refer to those articles that you should know. Don't by heart it. See, there are a lot of articles we have studied, but not every article's content needs to be associated with the number of the article. But there are some articles where you should know which article is that, right? So I would prefer if you read the article on your own from the Constitution. Download the PDF, purchase the book, read the article on it. Don't mug it up, but know that this is the article which mentions this point. Okay. So important articles would be starting with Article 54. Article 54 refers to the Electoral College, which comprises of elected MPs and elected MLAs of the state. States would also include assemblies of Pondicherry and Delhi. Then Article 71 is important. Why? Because it talks about the electoral disputes of the election of president and vice president can only be heard by Supreme Court. Just recite, when I write the article, try to recollect what it was. Then Article 60 is what? Oath of the president. Then three articles, 266, Clause 1, Clause 3, and Clause 2, of course, for PAI, and 267 for the contingency fund. Then Article 61, what is 61? Impeachment. Article 74, very, very important, of course. The president is bound by the advice of Council of Ministers. Then Article 361, what is this article? This is the immunity being given to the president and the governors. Then Article 310 is the pleasure doctrine of the president for officers. Then Article 72 is the clemency power. Then Article 85, sessions, summoning, proroguing. Article 86, Article 87, mandatory or special address of the president. Then Article 103, which is what? The MPs will be disqualified on the order of the president. Then Article 123. Oh, sorry, we forgot one more article. Let's write here only. 78. Though we'll discuss this article again in the next topic, but still. And finally, Article 123. What is Article 123? Article 123 is ordinances. We just saw ordinances, right? Article 123. Then we also saw one schedule. Which schedule did we see? We saw Schedule 2. Schedule 2 comprises the list of names of all those people whose salaries are mentioned there. Let's revise. President, governor, presiding officers of all the legislatures, Supreme Court, High Court judges, and CAG. These salaries are mentioned in the second schedule of the Indian Constitution. These articles, these schedules. Now coming to important cases. First case that you should remember is, of course, the Shatrughan Chauhan case. Shatrughan Chauhan case is of 2014. Second case to remember is the DC Wadhwa case. DC Wadhwa case is of 1987. Third is the Krishna Kumar Singh case of 2017. Okay, that's it. We are done with the topic president. Okay, let's try to solve some questions. We'll also see how much of revision has been happening. These are just practice questions for you. Please, I'll give you 1 minute to solve, type in the answer, and then we'll discuss this also right now. Don't type in an answer. I'll launch the poll, so please use the poll. I'll give a minute for each of these questions, not more than that. These are easy questions, can be done. Done? Oh, 22% got the correct answer. Amazing that some of you did not read the question properly, I believe. Which of the above statements are incorrect? Not correct. Right? I hope for most of you this was the error. Correct, incorrect. So kindly read the statement carefully. Okay? The president is elected by an electoral college consisting of elected members of parliament, of course, and the state legislative assemblies. Absolutely correct. One is correct. Nominated members of both houses of parliament and state councils are also take part. They don't take part. 2 is wrong. The voting is done by an open ballot. No, the voting is done by a secret ballot. 3 is wrong. Incorrect. 2 and 3. B is the right answer. Okay. So hence the right answer is B and not A. Extremely sorry. Moving on to the next question very quickly. Solve this, a minute of time. No need to hurry. A minute of time. Have patience. So just read. Done. 47% got this correct. Again, for the remaining 31%, we'll have to host those who mark D. See, impeachment, Article 61. Okay. The president can be removed from his or her office only on the ground of, we know the reason is violation of constitution. Absolutely correct. 1 is correct. This can't be the answer. Remove. The impeachment charges against the president can be initiated by either house, of course, Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. The only condition is 1/4 MPs are required to initiate. 2 is also correct. If 2 is right, this can't be the answer. Only the elected members of parliament can participate in impeachment. No, 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 no. All MPs take part in impeachment. Only elected MPs take part in elections. So 3 is wrong. B, 1 and 2 only is the right answer. Next question. I'll give you slightly lesser time here. It's a small question. 30 seconds, I believe, should be sufficient. Again, a lot of you have marked C as the answer. Let's see what is the answer. Under Article 61, President cannot be removed for misbehavior. Can the President be removed for misbehavior? Of course not. Under Article, please, words are very important. That is why the word and phrase is mentioned there. Under Article 61, the President can only be removed. On what ground? Only be removed on the ground of violation of the Constitution. Misbehavior or not, we don't know. Don't create your own words. The phrase used is violation of Constitution. That's it. Right? So 1 is correct actually. The president can't be removed for misbehavior. He can only be removed if he violates the Constitution. That's it. No other reason. 1 is correct. This means C and B can't be the answers only. Let's check now. The president can, now it's, if you have removed C and B, then what remains? A and D. Let's read 3. President can hold his office beyond 5 years. Yes or no? Of course, the president can hold office beyond 5 years. 3 is correct. D is the right answer. Let's read 2 also. President can submit his resignation to the Chief Justice. No, to the Vice President of India. So 2 any which way is wrong. But if you look at 1 as the correct statement, then there is no need to actually look at 2. D is the right answer. 1 and 3. Okay. Solve one more question. Very simple. I will not give you more than 30 seconds. I believe 30 seconds should be sufficient. Please read the statement carefully before marking the answer. %35% mark D as the answer. Okay. I think rare situation where most of you got this answer correct. With reference to second schedule, the salaries of which of the following dignitaries is not mentioned? So, Chief Election Commissioner's salary is not mentioned, of course. Chairman UPSC's salary is not mentioned, of course. Judges of subordinate court salary is not mentioned. Judges of Supreme Court and High Court, their salary is mentioned. This means what? 2, 3 and 4. These people's salaries are not mentioned in Schedule 2. Salaries of President, Governor, the presiding officer of the what? Legislatures, meaning Speaker of Lok Sabha, salary is mentioned. Supreme Court, High Court judges, salary is mentioned, and CAG, their salary is mentioned. So 2, 3 and 4 are those people whose salaries are not mentioned, making D the right answer. Okay. Last question. Please solve this. 30 seconds of time. Okay, 52% of you got the right answer. That's great, amazing. At the commencement of the first session after each general election to the Lok Sabha, the president addresses both houses of the parliament assembled together. Of course, mandatory or special address of the president. This is Article 87. One is correct. If one is correct, remove these two. The president can address either house of the parliament. Optional address. Article 86, clause 1. Right? At any time and any place that he or she deems fit. 2 is also correct. Right answer is C, both 1 and 2. Okay, fair enough. So this is where we end our discussion on the chapter President. Right? So, and this is an exact line mentioned in the constitution. So now don't think that if they mention any place, this means the president will call them on the moon or call them on the Himalaya, Mount Kanchenjunga and all. Of course not. But any place, any time, as he thinks fit. That is a line or a phrase mentioned in the constitution. I think I mentioned the same statement while I was teaching also. Okay. Now, coming to the next topic, that is Vice President of India. So we have seen a very important post called the president. Now the next important post, the vice president. And if you think that president has no real powers, welcome to the discussion vice president. This person hardly has any power. That is the vice president of India. Very quick. Article 63. Article 63 says that there shall be a VP of India. Okay. And to those who do not know, let me clarify one point here. There is an article in the Indian Constitution called Article 64, also Article 89, same thing. Both articles have the same content. They say that whoever is the vice president automatically becomes the what? Chairman of Rajya Sabha. So, vice president of India is the ex officio chairperson of Rajya Sabha. Ex officio means by virtue of. Meaning what? By virtue of you being the vice president, you will be made the chairman of Rajya Sabha. Whoever becomes the vice president automatically becomes the chairman of Rajya Sabha. Okay. Anyway, so how is the election conducted? So very simple. You have Article 66, which states that the election for the post of vice president is conducted by ECI, of course, right? And every MP of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they will vote together. So all MPs, whether elected or nominated, every MP of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, both of them will vote together to elect the vice president. Okay, so since we only have MPs, there is no concept of vote value here. Vote values concept would come into picture only if we had MPs and MLAs. So no concept of vote value. And then other things are exactly the same. Meaning here also we say that there is a system of what? Proportional representation. There is a system of single transferable vote. We have something called here also secret ballot, and here also no nota. What is nota? None of the above. So no nota here also. Then here also we have the concept of proposers. We have the concept of seconders. How many proposers? For president, 50. For vice president, 20. How many secondaries for president? 50. For VP, 20. Here also, we have the same security deposit, which is 15,000 rupees. Then here also the same article, disputes. Which article? Article 71. And small difference here. When it comes to the president, who can approach the Supreme Court for any election dispute? The candidate or at least 20 electors. Here, minimum or at least 10 electors must approach Supreme Court. And who are the electors here? Electors here are MPs in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. I hope this point is clear. So it's the same thing, nothing to discuss in detail here. We know all these things. Now coming to qualification. What is the qualification? You have to be a citizen of India, minimum age 35 years, exactly the same. You should not hold any office or profit, same provision. Slight difference. When it comes to the president, you should be qualified to be eligible or for election to Lok Sabha. For vice president, you should be qualified for election as a member of Rajya Sabha. Difference. See, age is the same, citizenship is the same, office of profit is the same. The only difference is that you have to be eligible to be elected for Rajya Sabha. Okay. So this is the situation. Everything else is exactly the same. So here also, everything proportional representation, single transferable vote, secret ballot, no nota, no ADL, no proxy, everything is exactly the same. Please follow what I'm saying. Everything is exactly the same. Okay. Whenever you have any kind of proportional representation and all, there will be no nota, and you have secret ballot. Okay. That's there. Now, so that is a qualification for the vice president. Now, oath or affirmation. So the president's oath is mentioned under Article 60. The VP's oath is mentioned under Article 69. And see, when it comes to the President of India, their oath contains, terms like to preserve, protect, and uphold the Constitution. But for the Vice President, since they hardly have powers, their oath is very bare and bland. Nothing is mentioned. Bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution and faithfully discharge my duties. The oath to the President is administered by CJI. The oath to the Vice President is administered by the President, not the CJI. And if the President is too busy doing nothing, then some person appointed in that behalf by the President. Any random person can be chosen to administer the oath to the Vice President. Are you clear? So maybe the President can choose you also. No, they won't choose you, don't worry. But they may choose you also and ask you, please come administer the oath to the Vice President. So that's it. Okay. Then comes the removal. Now this is important because this is slightly different. Removal is mentioned under the provisions of Article 67 Clause B. Please remember the article. Earnest request here. This article is important. Now, of course, The VP can resign also. Don't think they can't resign. They can resign. And they will submit their resignation to president. And the president submits their resignation to whom? To whom does the president submit resignation? Please write. Supreme Court judge or Chief Justice or Vice President? Okay, absolutely correct. Vice President, not Chief Justice. Okay, Vice President. But one more thing, the VP has to also immediately inform the Speaker of Lok Sabha of the resignation submitted by the President. Here, the President need not inform anybody. Okay. Secondly, of course, here also, just like the President will continue beyond 5 years till the new person comes, here also, VP continues till successor enters office. Okay, basic things. Now let's look at the removal of the vice president, which is slightly different from the president. First things first, there is no reason for removal. When it comes to president, what's the reason? The reason is violation of constitution. Very important element. No reason or ground mentioned in the constitution for removal. Look at the importance we have given. We did not even give any reason for his removal. Remove at any given point of time. Dress is not nice. Remove. No, they won't remove like this. Don't worry. Anyway, second thing, when it comes to president, certain number of MPs have to give a notice. That is 1/4 MPs. There is no such requirement here. A single MP can get up and give a notice. But removal can start, can be initiated, can be moved only in the Rajya Sabha. So initiated or moved only in Rajya Sabha. So the removal of VP cannot start in Lok Sabha. It has to start only in Rajya Sabha. This basically means that removal process cannot start in Lok Sabha. Okay. Now, same thing, 14 days notice is given. When 14 days notice is given to the VP that, sir, we are removing you, you please pack your bags, whatever. Discussions, voting takes place, right? In the Rajya Sabha, voting will take place. Voting by how? Voting by effective majority. What is effective majority? So, in the case of president, to remove the president, to impeach him, at least 2/3 of all the members of the house, total strength of the house was required. But for the vice president, effective majority is required. Now, what is effective majority? Let's take this example. In the Rajya Sabha, what is the total strength of Rajya Sabha? Any idea? 245 is the total strength of Rajya Sabha. Let us say total strength or total membership. Let us say at any given point of time, there are some vacancies in Rajya Sabha. Say yesterday, 8 MPs were going in a bus to Goa and the bus crashes and all 8 MPs die. Let's assume. We're not hoping for that to happen. Let's assume. Example. Don't feel sad. Nobody has died. Let's say there are 8 vacancies. Okay. This means what is the effective strength Effective strength means total strength minus vacancy. That is called effective strength. Okay. And effective strength will become how much? 245 minus 8, which is equal to 237. Effective majority means more than 50% of effective strength, which will here be what? More than 50% of 237. CSAT, tell me what is the answer? Half of 237 is how much? It will be 118.5 is half. More than half is how much? 119. If 119 in this example only, if 119 MPs in the Rajya Sabha approve it, then the matter goes to Lok Sabha. In the Lok Sabha, it should be passed by a simple majority. That's it. What is simple majority? It means more than 50% of MPs who are present on that day, present and voting. That's it. So, simple majority in the Lok Sabha, effective majority in the Rajya Sabha. This is what is required for the removal of the vice president. I'll repeat the entire process again. Forget this calculation, all that is of no concern to us. So, what's the procedure? Removal. The procedure can start only in Rajya Sabha, not in Lok Sabha. No reason is mentioned. No number of MPs are required. Any single MP can get up and give a notice. 14 days notice is given to the president, vice president. Then discussions take place. Voting takes place in Rajya Sabha with effective majority. And then it is passed. It goes to Lok Sabha, where the voting takes place through a simple majority. That is how the VP stands removed. That's it. Article 67B deals with the removal of the vice president of the country. Okay. There was a question asked once around 20 years back. Solve this question quickly. I won't give too much of time. 30 seconds. That also I feel is too much of time. Please mark the answer. No, abstaining from voting is not counted in vacancy. Vacancy means no person is holding the seat. That's called vacancy. Shalu has asked, when it comes to the Prime Minister giving orders to President to sign, that's not possible only. That is wrong. How can the President give an order to Prime Minister to sign a bill? PM give an order to President to sign a bill? Bill comes from Parliament. Such orders can't be given. Okay, so that's not possible. 77% marked D, which is the correct answer, of course. Why did 13% marked C as the answer? Joint sitting and all? Where did we study joint sitting? The resolution for removing the Vice President of India can be moved in the Rajya Sabha alone. That's it. D is the right answer. Okay. Now, when it comes to the powers and functions, VP has no power. I mean, I know you will feel bad about it, but that's the sad story. Vice President has no power. In fact, Vice President always hopes that if something happens to President, he can be the acting President for 6 months. That's all he can hope. Nothing else. Basically, all the powers that the VP has are with respect to the role that he gets when he becomes the chairman of the Rajya Sabha. That's where the power comes from. As a VP, he has no power. He only has ceremonial functions to perform. That's it. So, the only power he has is of this. Article 64. Right? And we know very well that he will act, Article 65 says he will act as the president for a maximum period of 6 months. When a vacancy occurs, due to resignation, removal, death, or otherwise, he can become the acting president for 6 months. That's it. And that is all as far as VP is concerned. We are done with the chapter Vice President also. So in case you are reading Lakshmikant, you can refer to chapter 18 of Lakshmikant, important articles. Yes, Article 64 and Article 67B. These are the only two important articles. Article 64 says that whoever is the VP becomes what? The chairperson of Rajya Sabha. Article 67B deals with the removal of the vice president. Okay. Important cases, no important case. That's it. We are done with the vice president. Please solve some questions quickly. I'll launch the poll. I'll give you a minute to solve. Please mark your answer. Read the statement carefully. Ten seconds remain. 44% marked A as the right answer. Great. Let's see. As per the Constitution, the vice president acts as the president if a vacancy is caused because of resignation, removal, or death. One is correct. If one is correct, remove this. He or she is elected by an electoral college which comprises of the members of both houses of courts, MPs of both the houses, including nominated members. Everybody is included. 2 is also correct. If 2 is correct, remove this also. Let's check 3. The qualifications and manner of election for being a VP are the same as prescribed for the office of president. See, manner of election and qualification. To be a president of India, the Constitution says you should be eligible to become a member of Lok Sabha. For Rajya Sabha, for VP, you have to become eligible to be a member of Rajya Sabha. So for president, it is a Lok Sabha. For VP, it is the Rajya Sabha. So 3 is wrong. D is wrong. A is the right answer. If you could find even statement 3 is wrong, remove 3 and you have the right answer. A, 1 and 2 only. Solve one more question. 30 seconds are sufficient, I believe. Quite a less number of students attempted it. So, and that too, a lot of you marked A as the answer, 1 and 3. It is obligatory for the parliament to create such a fund. Amazing. Really? But we have been constantly saying which of the following statements regarding contingency fund of India are correct. Is it obligatory? Contingency fund is optional. Refer to slides. It's mentioned there. That is why Parliament may or may not create a fund. it did create a fund. It is not obligatory, it is optional. So 3 is wrong. If you remove 3, these 2 are gone. Now B or D are the answers. Check 2. Amount from consolidated fund of India is used to recoup the contingency fund of India. Meaning what? Contingency fund. Where does the money come from? The money comes from CFI only, because that is where the government's money is coming in. Any money the government obtains, revenue generation, taxes imposed, loans taken, repayment of loan, where does the money come into? CFI. From CFI, they keep on filling up contingency fund at regular intervals. So this 2 is correct. If 2 is correct, B is the right answer. That's it. Let's check 1 also. It aims to facilitate meeting of urgent unforeseen expenditure by the government without any need for parliamentary authorization. Really? I mean, contingency fund has to be authorized. The authorization is actually post expenditure. Yes or no? Not pre expenditure like CFI, but post expenditure. But authorization is required. So 1 any which way was wrong, because we have eliminated 3, so 1 is also gone and 1 is wrong. Right answer is B, 2 only. That's it. We are done with vice president also. Now coming to Council of Ministers. So far I think Deepak has got 7 correct. Dhaval 6, Shiva 6, Ashutosh 6, Manish 6, Priyanka 6, Janvi 6. A lot of you have got 5 correct so far. Okay, that is as far as the toppers here are concerned. Okay, now coming to Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers refers to the government, the real power. Now we look into who is the body or which are the group of people who control this country. So we are going to refer to the real executive of this country now. That is the government, the entire Council of Ministers, headed by the Prime Minister. So there are some articles that we should know. For example, these 3 primary articles. We should know all these 3 articles, of which we already know 2 articles. We know Article 74, yes or no, the aid and advice of Council of Ministers, binding on the President, made by the 42nd Amendment Act, can send back once for reconsideration, made mandatory by the 44th Act of 78. Clause 2 says, whatever advice you give to the President will not be inquired into in any court of law. That's it. 78 is also something we know, right? The duty of the PM to furnish information. And then the 3rd clause, which says that the President can seek the advice of entire council if he feels that only single minister is giving advice. So we have already seen 74 and 78. Let us look at Article 75, all the clauses one by one. Starting with the very first clause, Article 75, Clause 1. It says, the Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President. Okay. And all other ministers shall be appointed by the President only, but on the advice of Prime Minister. Meaning what? This person, Prime Minister, is the one who advises that, sir, he is my best friend, make him Home Minister. Second best friend, make him Defense Minister. Third best friend, make him Finance Minister. The PM's choice. That's it. You cannot force the President or you cannot force the PM into appointing you. Every minister is holding that post because they are very close to Prime Minister. That's it. Because the PM's advice is binding on the President. So whoever the PM chooses to be appointed as any minister, the president has to appoint that person as the minister. I hope this point is clear. Okay. So this is with respect to the appointment of ministers. The entire group of ministers is called the Council of Ministers. What is council? Council is an English word, right? Group of people. So council of people, council of ministers. So entire group of ministers is called council, and every minister is appointed by the president but on the advice of prime minister. As I said, the PM has complete discretion on who to choose. Complete discretion on who to choose. That's it. Okay. One more thing. Whether you are a minister, home minister, finance minister, or you are the prime minister, which house can you belong to? Can the prime minister belong to Rajya Sabha? Yes or no? Tell me quickly. Can the PM belong to Rajya Sabha? Whoever says yes, please mark A. If you say no, mark B. Can the PM belong to Rajya Sabha? Yes, A, B, no. Let's see. Amazing. 42% say no. Yes, you can belong to any house. There have been so many situations. Indira Gandhi, Indra Kumar Gujral, H.D. Devegowda, and for 10 years, 2 terms, Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was an MP of Rajya Sabha. So anyone, any MP, Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha can become any minister, including Prime Minister. Are we clear on this point? This is how it is. Okay. You can be from any house. Any house. You can be elected. You can be nominated. So, any member of the parliament can become prime minister. Elected, nominated, Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha, does not matter. Okay. And to further add to this very important point, PM is the boss. PM is the boss of all the ministers. The entire council of ministers, the head is a PM. When the PM resigns from his post, entire council has to resign. When PM resigns, entire council of ministers, everybody, they also resign. Because your boss is not there, right? Okay. So that is there with respect to the council of ministers. When the PM resigns, sorry, you also have to go. As simple as that. Okay. Now, one more thing. Back in 1991, back in 1984, to be exact, what happened was Congress won by a huge majority. 400 plus seats. Rajiv Gandhi won the election because Indira Gandhi was assassinated, and then the country became emotional. They voted based on emotions. Said, how can a 40-plus-year-old person live without his or her parents? His parents. We have to make him prime minister. Anyway, then in 1989 he lost the elections. Coalition government was formed. Same thing happened later on. When a lot of parties come together to form the government, every party wants minister's post, right? And when you make somebody a minister, you have to give additional funds, etc. All this is there. Salary. How many ministers are required? We can't have 300 ministers. Not possible, right? So in 2003, the Vajpayee government modified the constitution and said, see, whoever forms the government, you cannot have more than certain number of ministers. Upper limit of maximum number of ministers is fixed, and that number is calculated based on total number of MPs of Lok Sabha. So, Article 75 Clause 1A, very important, says that the total number of ministers, including PM, the entire council shall not exceed, shall not cross, how much? 15% of the total number of members of House of People. What is House of People? Lok Sabha. That means what? Whatever number of ministers you want, maximum number of ministers, that is including Prime Minister. After all, Prime Minister is also a minister, including PM, should be how much? Should be 15% of total number of members of Lok Sabha. 543. So it would roughly be 81, I believe. That's it. You cannot have more than 81 ministers at the central level. That's the maximum limit. It has been fixed, and it has been fixed through amendment, which was the 91st Amendment Act 2003. That's it. So we minimize the expenditure, right? That's it. That is all as far as the maximum limit is concerned. Before we take a break, let us solve a question very quickly. Very simple, very easy question. I would give you 30 seconds to solve this question. Please solve the question, mark your answer. This is the type of question that are being asked from polity, right? Excellent. The right answer is 80. 1% people have marked the correct answer. Right answer is 91st Amendment Act of the year 2003. That's it. Let's take a break. After the break, we will again take up for discussion the remaining provisions of Article 75. Break, please. Be back at 3:40.